budget-based transportation equity for co-curricular activities and athletics. This administration has always favored budget-based equity in this area. Finally, logic dictates that we do exactly what we proposed here this evening. This funding is identical, and while the co-curricular aspect of this debate is less predictable, and we've said that for the last 5 years, if too much money has been placed in this line item, the money will simply be returned to the taxpayer.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's sort of we've had this debate for several years about co-curricular transportation funding, and that we wanted to make it as equitable as we could. But at the same time, we've also talked about the dynamics of transportation is very different from some co-curriculars than it is from athletic transportation. You know, in the district, if you've got a group of football players going to a tournament up north, it's a bus trip or maybe something else. But if you're sending 50 kids to someplace that requires plane flights, it's a whole lot more dollars. And I know that those co-curriculars do fundraising that offset costs. But I'm just wondering whether, I mean, we're sort of getting what we asked for as a board, and I'm wondering whether, is that the right thing to do, considering the higher level of costs of certain activities?
Yeah, so I think in terms of process, I think what we've done here tonight is gotten clarity from administration in terms of the budget that they've presented to us. When we actually work on the budget, if there's a board opinion on what the appropriate amount of funding is or should be in order to accomplish the board's goals in this area, then I think that's for us to probably take up at that point.
Right. But when you say that, when you said it was actual cost for the transportation in both of them, it just seemed odd to me that the numbers were identical for the athletic.
They're not actual costs per se, Andy. This will cover all of the costs, okay? And if, in fact, we put too much money into this particular account, that money will go back to the taxpayer. And in all due respect, I think that should end the debate.
Right, but I mean, but if there's not enough, if you've under-budgeted for like the co-curricular, then it'll be up to that thing for additional fundraising and stuff. That was more my question.
Right. And I think what the team is saying is they've taken a look at this and believe that the amounts will more than cover the travel that co-curriculars would need, and based on that analysis, that's why they put forward at least this number. Superintendent had something to add. Oh, Dr. McLaughlin, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think if this could just clarify, when we were working on this, I think your question had to do with logic, you know, what would have been the logic. And one of the things that we were, because it is kind of a, you know, it's a challenging thing to try to address, given all the unpredictability. So one of the things that we said was, well, if we look at the last several years, what's the furthest place that any team has gone? And let's calculate transportation based on that furthest place. What's the most number of students who've been involved in such a thing? And let's base our estimation on that highest number. And so that calculation, based on the worst case or best case scenario, however you want to look at it, is what we did to come up with the number that's here. So in all likelihood, not every time that a certain group has gone to Los Angeles, it won't always be Los Angeles. Sometimes it'll be, Memphis, and it'll be that much cheaper. But we based it on what's the furthest they've been in the last 5 years, and how is what's the most number of students who've been involved, and that produced this. So it's very unlikely that we would exceed that for transportation because it's based on the maximum, which is why Principal Johnson was saying that the more likelihood is probably that it would be returned to the general fund. So when you talk about logic, that was kind of the way we were trying to grapple with the challenge that this, kind of annually presents.
Vice Chair Barnes.
Well, just a couple of data points I wanted to bring up. We had this debate as we were doing our budgets last year, when we were doing our working session, and at the time, Davis was looking at, that number that would have covered. So I think we were looking at a bigger number. And so to me, this is no surprise. This is what we were discussing at the table last year. But because we didn't have time to prepare for that number and really discuss it and digest it and have data to support it, which we do with this table, it was a more difficult discussion and really not one we could put a good number to. So we added, I think it was $3,000 to the budget last year to make up for the 1 year that was level funded and then equal that number for a second year. This really, I think, went into getting a lot of data. And the high school came to us, came to Chris, and Chris invited me to a meeting to discuss what we're really looking for this year. They wanted to be prepared for us. This is a result of that request for preparation, that they took months and months of time and collected a lot of data. I think we came up with that form just to try to make this number come out. And I think with this first year, it's still more data that we're collecting. We don't have all the components because it was never really studied or collected. And I think part of it was what has been the parental contribution and fundraising that offset it. So they looked at, they had to do some real digging to get these numbers. But I think as time goes on, this is going to be an easier process for the high school because they will be collecting that data going forward for all the co-curriculars and will give us a better opportunity to really look at what the funding mechanism is and where we leave them with the funding that we provide. So this is, I think, a strong first step in a data-driven number to get us to where we have always talked as a board of being, which is equitable between co-curriculars and athletics. So, where the athletics have booster clubs, co-curriculars have theirs as well. But we just want to make sure that we are not putting them in a position where they cannot represent us, and when they do such a good job and give such a strong case for doing so. Unfortunately for co-curriculars, it's a national platform, where with athletics it's mostly state. So it's an easy and containable number for administration. So, as we talk going forward, I see this number having more science behind it, but you had to do a lot of digging, I can tell you did, to get the numbers that we got today. And they do come from a data-driven place, which is, I think, exciting for this board and a relief for this board, so we can really look at what you're defending. So this is, so appreciated. And from there, we can deliberate with a lot better data. And for that, I think we're in a good place. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Powell.
I echo what Vice Chair Barnes said, that this is very helpful. It helps alleviate the concerns that this board has had in the past that there was no equity there. So thank you for doing the due diligence and the work in doing this. And I don't know who's best to answer this question, Dr. McLaughlin or the team. And I'm not trying to be cynical when I ask this question, but the number, the bottom line dollar amount between the athletic account and the co-curricular account, were these derived at separately and just happened to arrive at the same exact amount, or was there a method behind that? It's just odd. That's all I'm saying.
Essentially, I would say it was a combination.
Okay.
Of what Shannon spoke to and looking at what equity truly means. And we really think and believe, based on our data, we might be up a little bit, but we also know that while the athletic costs are fixed costs and known, the transportation costs are not.
Exactly.
So in this particular case, better to err what we believe will be a little bit on the high side as opposed to under. And again, if we did go over, it goes back to the taxpayer.
Perfect. Thank you.
No, thank you.
And I think as I look at the table, if you look, the major travel is called out by team. And then there's a line item for all other clubs, right, which has an amount which brings it to parity with the athletic travel, right? So if you figure that, at best, this is, a worst case estimate, And if the goal is parity, I would think that having, less than 10% for all other clubs as a way of reaching parity, it kind of makes sense, right? As a
No,
way of
absolutely,
accomplishing it.
absolutely, and this goes to what I think we've been saying for the past couple of years, that we want to make sure that there's equal support on both fronts, and this does that.
Yeah.
And as you said, as we get more into it, or maybe Shannon said it, more into it and get more data, the numbers are going to diverge. I understand that. You have to start someplace.
Yeah.
So I just want to be able to explain it if and when the question comes up.
Sure. Yeah, but thanks again.
So as we go back to the questions, I noticed we started with the second question on the first page.
I did, because the first question really, it says to explain the district printing program, and that really is a question I deliberately passed on because I would defer it to Matt.
Oh, okay.
But if you'd like to
I'm
have
fine
Matt
with that.
address it.
Whatever order. I
Your
just
choice.
wanted to make sure it wasn't
Sure.
an omission, unintentional omission.
Okay.
That's fine. Keep
Okay.
going.
Pete, the next question?
So if you turn to page 10 of your budget book, it's on gifted and talented. The question is, can you explain how this one is different from the other gifted and talented programs? And it mentions fine arts. This line item supports the Quiz Bowl team, National History Day, Granite State Challenge, and future problem solvers. Our gifted and talented teacher works with the advisors in each of these programs, as well as department chairpersons for planning across the curriculum. This line item also supports trips to art and science museums, dramas, and musicals, and humanities events such as the philosophy conference. In other words, programs that affect the entire student body.
The next question by Co-Chair Barnes refers to page 11, and it's travel. And it says, talks about having an administrator at all away events. The question, is this both sports and co-curriculars? Does it cover foreign trips like those to Europe and China? So our answer there is that 1 year ago, the NHIAA requested an administrative presence at all home and away games. This line item does cover both sports and does cover co-curriculars. However, as we expressed at the NHIA, we cannot guarantee an administrative presence at all games or at each and every event. It does not cover foreign trips like those to Europe and China. So again, it was a request by the NHIA. Those games, you need to understand that. Let's take the basketball season. If you were talking varsity games only, you have traditionally games on a Tuesday night, girls basketball, let's say, and boys basketball. One would be home, one would be away. The same on a Friday night, one home, one away. We have 3 administrators. We can't be dancing all over the state covering each and every event. And I think what it was a message essentially by the NHIA, which we did our best to cover last year. We're doing our best to cover this year. And that only speaks to one sport in the winter. It doesn't count wrestling and other events. So that's why that item is listed that way. To make it clear, though, it does not address China or any trips to Europe. Okay?
Mr.
Pete?
Marcus.
Okay.
To go back to the last question, sorry, on the gifted and talented transportation, you mentioned that
It's on.
Lights on. You mentioned that the costs go towards National History Day and Quiz Bowl. You mentioned a couple others, but they're also represented in the chart on page 9. So is that the same funding listed under 2 line items, or is it 2 separate? I don't know how to articulate what I'm trying to ask, because it's represented, as you said, in both the gifted and talented transportation and the co-curricular transportation.
It is a good question, Jacob. And this is an addition to, so that amount of money, as it says, also goes to the other fine arts programs. So the gifted and talented teacher wanted to add some of that money for those specific programs that are school-wide.
All right, so she can use it to defray any costs at her discretion.
Yes.
Same.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Powell? No? Okay. Let's proceed.
So the next question is on page 16 that Mrs. Barnes asked on student publications. Please explain how revenue is managed that offset the cost to publish the advertising revenues. To be perfectly clear on this point, we do not actively solicit revenue from outside sources. Driving schools, bridal and gown stores, and prom promoters may come to us, but the revenue we receive is minimal and exclusive to the school newspaper, The Hawk, not our poetry book, which we have at the end of the year, Spilt Ink. What little money we do get goes to central office for them to deposit into this particular line item.
So the next one, athletics, please.
So the next question also appears on page 16 on athletic supplies. Please share how we manage our AEDs and if they are in place for off-campus sports. This is a very good question, as they are for on-campus sports. Examples include tennis, hockey, for the swim team and ski teams. Are these comparable supplies for co-curriculars with risks such as for U.S. First? Our 3 AEDs are located strategically about our school building, and they're checked on a regular basis by the nurse for readiness. Specific to athletics, there is an AED at Westside Arena for our hockey team in Manchester. Also at the YMCA for our swim team. When and where we have our ski teams where they travel, the ski patrols have an AED with them. For example, tomorrow we have our first home ski team meet at Crotchet Mountain, and Crotchet Mountain, they have one there, and their ski patrol has one. So the 3 we have for athletics are divided out for the boys and girls lacrosse, and one stays always with our athletic trainer. Presently, we do not have an AED situated for our tennis teams at Wasserman Park.
Next question, be this one here.
Ms. Gualiun?
So for this line item, are there any actual athletics equipment other than as part of the line item? So I see supplies, rental time, equipment reconditioning, but are there actually supplies?
Cindy, I think as we address some other questions, that'll become more clear for you.
Okay.
It will.
Okay. I just,
And if it doesn't, you can
Okay.
ask again.
I saw the line item, I just wanted to make sure.
Do you want to take this one here? Yep. Okay.
So the next question is on page 4 of your budget book, and it deals with athletics equipment repairs. So this line item is new, but it's very significant. It's discussing recondition of our helmets and shoulder pads, which we must send out every year, as well as repair of our wrestling mats. Were these items never previously repaired, or were they covered in a different line item before? And as you'll see in a later question, how do these tie to other repair budget categories for athletic equipment? So, helmets, shoulder pads, and game apparel are tested for their integrity by an outside source. Face mask pads, grommets, pumps, chin straps, etc., and have been repaired accordingly. This has been covered under a different line item in the past. As in regards to the wrestling mats, we have not repaired or reconditioned them at the very least in 5 years. This will help prolong their life, obviously, when we recondition them. But we must send out our helmets every year. That's a given. They're what's called NOC certified. It's a certifying agency throughout the United States.
And I think I'm going to pick up on the next one because I think this would help Cinda and Andy, because this question was posed by Andy. And that goes to page 16. and it's the area of athletic supplies. So the way the question is posed, it says, this item includes as one component something called football equipment reconditioning. Can you call out how this is different than the previous equipment repairs category? Are there things covered here beyond just the pads and helmets? And I'm wondering whether this category previously used in other budgets for other repair costs. So again, while it can be difficult, if you can piece together all these pieces, this line item on page 16 addresses ice rental, swim rental, ski slope rental, and medical supplies. And this, I think, is the key here. It also includes roughly, and again, roughly 10 to 15% of football helmets and shoulder pads that were submitted for reconditioning, which is what Pete just spoke to, but were rejected and therefore not calculated in the new helmets request. And I would call that a trend. So what that means is we have to take all of the equipment we have, all the apparel we have. We send out the uniforms, they sew them, they clean them. We send out the helmets, they recondition all those parts that he just spoke to you. What varies year to year is their response to us, hey, you have 10 helmets that are fine. That doesn't mean they won't do work, but you don't have to account for them. So we can't possibly account for that. Some years it's 40 helmets, some years it could be 20 helmets, but it's generally about 10 to 15%. So that's why it seems redundant, but it really isn't. It's something distinctly different. Okay? I know. It can be confusing for us too, but really it's about as clear as I can make it for you. So again, we send it out all to be reconditioned,
Right.
and then it's actually a benefit, but we have to take into account that 10 to 15% that they reject.
Right, so you've added a new, so that's been part of the item on page 16 for years. I mean, that's the way you've been, every year you send it out. This year, you've added $12,300 on page 4, and you call out football equipment explicitly. Now, you said that's specific to the, maybe I didn't understand, maybe I'm just being dense tonight, I don't know. Can you differentiate again what would normally be repaired? And you said some of them get rejected. Now, that would account for the new ones you're probably going to want to buy.
Right.
But the ones that are now captured under this new area that's called athletic equipment repairs, how does that repair differ than the one that's covered under the page 16 item?
So if you look at that category, it's not just about repairs. As I said before, you got ice rentals in there, swim rentals, slope rentals, and so on.
Right, right.
So the others are very specific. Oh, Pete seems like he wants to.
Well, maybe this will help you, Andy. So on page 4, for
Yep.
the athletics equipment repair for high school, you know, we're all thinking of it as repair, but it's actually, we send them out, we call them reconditioners. They get sent out in all those helmets, shoulder pads, and wrestling mats, which, by the way, brand new are very expensive. If we send them out, we have to send out the football helmets. The shoulder pads, the coach takes a look at them. The wrestling mats we send out to get repair because they'll extend the life of the wrestling mats and also the shoulder pads. So it makes sense to have this line item.
So the repairs are done on page 16, and it sounds like this is reconditioning of those items on page 4.
Repairs, recondition, I would say, to me, it's one and the same on page 4, whereas on page 16, that is an athletic supply account. And also for ice rentals, for, as Ken said, also for the swim team.
Right. I'm just trying to figure out why, if we were doing repairs on that one account that was general athletic supplies, what's occurred this year to all of a sudden say that we need, I mean, obviously the wrestling mat is separate, but you call out football helmet reconditioning in 2 places in this, and that's why I'm just.
Well, I think what Ken was saying is that, so they go out, Okay, they're rejected, so then we have to buy those new helmets. So that was the account for the 10 to the 15% increase for that, for the football helmets. We know that, for example, football helmets have a shelf life of 10 years, so the coach knows going in, they track that. So I don't know if that, if that helps you.
But except that those 10 new helmets are accounted for in a different place in the budget.
Right, they're at page 16 in that supply account.
No,
No.
isn't there someplace else that the new ones are added in? Oh.
Yeah, he's right. Page 6, page 4.
Yeah, page 23. If you look at page 23.
Oh, okay. Our page 4.
It lists under the replacement equipment, it lists 10 new helmets and shoulder pads in that account there. So that's why I was just trying to understand the difference of repair between those two accounts. And then, because you've already accounted for the incremental you have to replace in the back section there. So that was my only reason for asking the question as to what the difference is.
Before, I know Mr. Powell and Ms. Guglielmi had their hands up. Mr. Chevino.
Thanks.
had something to share.
Just briefly, I seem to recall in conversation that please correct me if I'm wrong, that this year you're undertaking a more extensive reconditioning effort in years past, and that's why we separated that line out.
Correct.
Okay.
And in our talks with Eric Sabian, the athletic director.
And the new football coach.
Yeah, and also the new football coach. That's the direction we wanted to go in.
So this is basically, it's separated out basically because it's over and above the norm. It's a more extensive reconditioning process. That was my rudimentary understanding of what was going on.
Right. Okay, fair enough.
Mr. Powell.
Well, Matt, you answered my question. I was going to ask, where was this $12,000 last year? So that answers the question. I guess I'm with Andy. I'm not understanding why it has to be a separate line item. Why is it being differentiated?
Well, perhaps it's a style issue, and because it was an extensive reconditioning, the thought was it should probably be highlighted. But it seems to, the highlighting of it seems to have added confusion as opposed to clarity. So maybe we'll go back to the way it was before.
It does, because it looks, like Andy said, it looks like you've got 3 line items that are repairing the same thing. And it just sort of jumps out.
Superintendent.
I think I remember when we were going through our budget hearings that we felt if we used the term pure budgeting, that athletic equipment repairs was a more accurate term than supply, because supply is considered consumable. It comes, it goes. And we really wanted to say that this football equipment has repair to it, has to, and the standard has gone up appreciably, and we wanted to call it out, which we've not done before. So I think it's our attempt to put it where it needs to be put. Now, a fall over into the supply, we need to go back if that causes confusion. But we really attempted to call out repairs for the first time because the standard is much higher. Say nothing of our athletic director and new football coach. It's the fact that, with everything you read, helmets, shoulder pads, anything to protect the player. And we felt it was important to call it out. So I think I'm going to call it a transition item, but I want you to appreciate the fact that we're trying to call out the repairs for what they are. I think they were subsumed before. I think they fell under supplies, and we said that is not appropriate.
That was our
That's not really what it
conversation.
is. Was that not it?
Yeah, and we were trying to bring clarity
So we called
around
it
it,
out.
Is it also possible that in calling it out, keeping the text of the line item in the budget book that says also includes football equipment reconditioning?
That should probably be stricken.
Okay. That actually provides clarity to me.
Because when you see reconditioning in 2 different spots, you're wondering, what's the deal? So I think that needs to be
Okay.
stricken from that area.
Hence where was the 12,000 last year? Why did this
Absolutely.
go up if you're taking 12,000 out? Okay, thank you.
Ms. Guglielmi?
I mean, I like the idea of it being in its own line item. I don't have a problem with that at all, because when I start to look at, a proposed amount of $70,000, and I get the feel for, okay, there's some ice rental, there's swimming rental, there's ski slope time, but it's all kind of slushed together, and it's a very large amount. So I like the fact that it's defined and in its line item that way, and it sounds like just some of the text wasn't maybe updated to go with that line item.
So if we do clarification of the text
Yeah.
for next year, that you probably want to see this in its own separate account as far as reconditioning, because as Pete and as the superintendent has stated, there's a big push on keeping the football equipment in the best condition it can possibly be, especially with the concussion protocols that we're looking at right now and injuries and whatnot. So that's why I know that's why it was separated, in an effort to bring clarity to it. But because of the reconditioning wording being in both spots, it kind of jumbled it up. So
And-
we'll take care of that.
And that's, the safety of our students is, the
Yeah.
utmost, I think, of all of our concerns. The other thing that I would like to see, since I'm looking at this a little bit closer, I was wondering if you could send me, Matt, just kind of the expenditures from the 2014-15. I would just like to see kind of how that came in and what those costs are in greater detail. That would just help me a little bit better.
Okay. Vice Chair Barnes?
And what I would like to see is, it's such a dump of information in different areas. When you're thinking about supplies and reconditioning and ice time, and what doesn't sound like the other, rentals of ice time and slope time and swim time. I think that the itemization of the things like ice time, slope time, swim time should be culled out so we know what those costs are. When you realize, how much of that goes into it, there's just, I think, too much going on in that line item to give an easy understanding and clarity. So if there was an opportunity to give, and you have done it in other areas of the budget, and we eat that stuff up. So it gives us an opportunity to really get an idea of where you're coming from. And honestly, it minimizes our questions on nights like tonight. So, I would love to see more itemization when it comes to that kind of general data repository repository of money that covers so many different things.
And I'm imagining, based on what I know, that the driver of increases in this line item are probably not the supplies, but the increased cost of ice time, slope time, pool time, et cetera. Mr. Schneider.
Exactly that, because if you then remove the football reconditioning to its own account, you're still seeing a $9,000 budget increase from the previous year. So it says, okay, you lost the football reconditioning out of it, you're doing it more, but yet it's gone up. Why? So if you broke it apart, it'd be easier for us
This
to
is fine.
understand.
I mean, that's actually easily
Right,
done.
right.
Great.
So I'm terribly excited to go to the next question that Annie raised. So here we go.
Please do.
And because it has something to do with athletic equipment and replacement at MHS. So this one calls out specific line items to purchase new. In terms of helmets and pads, I'm assuming this is to replace items not repairable and earlier budget items. Has this been a trend in the past? And in terms of the goalposts, have we verified that this year we must replace them? So as we all take a deep breath. To answer the first part of the question, yes, these items have reached or exceeded their shelf life. And yes, this has been a trend in the past. Pertaining to the goalposts, they have been certified as safe, meaning the integrity of the joints are sound. However, there is significant corrosion and rusting, and if you look at them, the goalposts themselves are beginning to list. Therefore, I strongly suggest and believe it prudent that they be replaced before any transformation of the field or track takes place, so that trucks or any heavy construction equipment Do not cross the new track, inviting possible damage to the track itself.
Mr. Schneider.
Yeah, and the reason I asked specifically about that is when we talked about the goalposts last year, we asked the question whether there was structural issues or whether it was just cosmetic. And we got the impression it was more cosmetic last year, but you said a phrase, listing to the side, which
Yes.
told me maybe a left-footed kicker now has a benefit over a right-footed
very well
kicker.
be.
But as soon as you've now done a keyword that says now, even though structurally they might be right, if they're in the ground and they're listing, then that's just as much of a problem. So that
Actually,
was-
if you went out to the field, you'd see it's obvious.
Yeah, the goalposts themselves, if you look at them, they're not plumb. They both go in towards the 50-yard line.
So it's harder to kick a field goal in Merrimack than other places.
Could very well be, to our
Or in,
advantage, you know,
whatever.
depending upon training.
Ms. Guglielmi.
And after last year's discussion, we had someone come out and take a look at them, right?
Yes,
We had an
that's right.
engineer come out and, okay,
Mhm.
thank-
Can I ask a question? In the summary that you gave, you talked about a pair of soccer goals.
Yes.
Would that be under, on page 23, the nets that are listed here on page 23? Yeah. Right. So I guess my question is where do the soccer goals show up?
That's a good question. What page? On page 21.
Page 21. Got it. Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Great. Ms. Guglielmi.
Are those soccer nets replacement for ones that are broken, or are we in need of an extra set?
Those two goals are going to be for the freshman boys soccer and freshman girls soccer programs that we did not run this past year.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Oh, I
We just
thought it-
figured out the decoder ring, that the soccer nets are under additional equipment, and the other was under the
I
replacement.
know, it does seem rather
So, yeah.
complex. but It is a complex budget.
Yeah, right.
Just blame it on Matt.
It's a cost accounting thing. All right. Shall we move on? I believe there was a question that was deferred, or did we cover that?
No, we said that we would take it on, and this is going to be one that Matt and I are both going to cover. So the first thing I want you to know is it looks under tech ed and so on, but it really is a district printing program. And the person who's been in place, Larry Brown, was originally a teacher at Merrimack High School and taught printing as a teacher. And then in 2000, he left teaching, and what we did is we contracted him to be a district printer because things had changed and students weren't really taking printing as we knew it then as a career tech experience. So he did all of our printing, as Matt pointed out, for both Merrimack and Bedford from 2000 to 2016. And he is going to do no more printing at the end of 16. And we have conferred and decided that we are going to be in a period of transition, and we are going to do much more online printing. You know that to be true with all the efforts we're making. You see in all of the printing accounts we've left $1,000 or a particular amount because there are some items that we know we want to be printed. We have asked the principals about their teacher handbooks, student handbooks. They're all going to be online. So we're in a transition period, and we are going to see whether we can do printing differently than we've done in the past, and if we make a change, we'll make it a year hence. But in this transition period, we want to do more online work and less actual printing. We know that there are some things that we need printed, the voter's guide, an annual report, and so we might contract specifically for that item, Therefore, we're leaving all of the equipment in the printing area as is for the time being, with the idea that would that make sense for us or not? So we're in transition. Add to that, please.
Oh, certainly. You all know that the Power School, our student information system, is basically our information portal. And what we've been doing and what we had appropriated in the last year's, in this year's current budget, is to add on modules to Power School to make it more robust. And so we're going to be starting to have online student registration instead of parents coming up and filling up forms. We're going to start that this year with kindergarten. So kindergarten is going to be our beta test for online registration. And we've been working with that module, and we've been working with actually Bedford school districts and other school districts to get the right kind of sequence of events on how that should be rolled out and what it should look like. And so we'll be issuing parents usernames, passwords, which they already have through, if they have Power School accounts. They'll be able to go on and register their children. They'll be able to go and view the parent-student handbook instead of getting a copy of it sent to their home and look at it. They'll be able to view it online as a PDF. They'll be able to check off a box that says, I read and understand this document. They'll be able to go through several other policies that we want them to view and then check that they have read them. So it'll give us a computerized trail that they have indeed seen these. They are online, so it's going to reduce the amount of documents that we're going to have to print and disseminate and then get a piece of paper back and then put in a paper file somewhere. It's all going to be online, and it's going to be data that's going to be able to be extracted and pulled up. So we'll know, who didn't. Well, actually, it's not going to let you complete your registration unless you've checked off all the boxes. And it's also kind of neat in the fact that it's interactive. If you're registering, let's say, when we go further on, and it's going to ask you, do you have any other children? And if you say yes, then the selection is going to expand. And it's going to say, how many do you have? 2. Okay, now it's going to give you 2 more slots. So you'll be able to put in other children that you have. Even if they're not in the school district, you can put them in there because they're going to be in the school district sooner or later. So that's one of the things that we're really looking forward. Also, we're leveraging School Messenger, which is another attachment to Power School, in the fact that we've collected a lot of parent email addresses, so a lot of newsletters going home, especially at Reed's Ferry School. They're pretty much out in the front as far as that's concerned. They're now sending all the newsletters home via email, and that's going to be a district-wide thing. So a lot of the things that we were having printed or run off or copied by the district printer is no longer going to be. So we're going to be left with certain items that we're going to subcontract out and look for particular vendors, go out to bid, and see what we can do as far as costs. So right now the cost on that's a moving target, but this hardware and equipment that's in this instructional equipment repairs account, we're not going to be looking at repairing any of that equipment. And maybe it'll find a different use, who knows, but we're not going to be utilizing it like we have in the past.
Great. Are there any other questions from the board? All right. Seeing none, I will thank you, gentlemen,
Well,
for
thank you all.
a
Thank you.
lively discussion. And that will take us to item number 5, budget discussion. At our meeting this week on Monday, I had asked that board members, if they are so inclined, to see recommendations from administration for potential cuts, be prepared tonight to discuss that. And I think in order to be fair to administration, if this is something that we're looking for, we need to be specific with a target range in terms of dollars. I'll be perfectly frank, I don't envy administration in trying to find recommendations for cuts in this budget. It's up 2.9% over last year, in a year that we've had a 12% increase in healthcare costs, and in a year in which the total overage really over last year's budget can be attributed directly to major capital improvement projects. So no small task. But that being said, if the board is interested in recommendations, if you might offer up a target amount if you are so inclined. Vice Chair Barnes.
I'd like to see two target amounts. We are looking at a $2 million increase overall from last year's operating budget. I'd like to see cuts up to $1 million, so trying to take half of that back. That being said, we know we have over $1 million in the roofing at Merrimack Middle School, which is an optional. We have close to $500,000 in the track, and that is an optional. It's not up for consideration. And although it's small in comparison to the other two numbers, not small to many families, I'm sure, but there's a $30,000 consideration for the Thornton's Ferry pre-K program installation of playground equipment, and I don't think that's prudent either at this time to be addressed, because when you come to the fact that all the infrastructure is taken care of except for this one element, I think it does give too much value and benefit to the district to overlook it for a cost-cutting measure. Another thing I don't think I would like to see happen is a reduction in force. I know that the staffing, when it is presented, it's presented with a very thoughtful presentation to the student-teacher ratio and the supply and demand for coursework. So that being said, I think that if you thought it was flexible, you'd have done it by now. So I would not be open to looking at staffing as a consideration for that. So that being said, if what you come up with isn't prudent, we as a board will obviously take that into consideration as well.
Ms. Guglielmi.
I'm okay with the $1 million amount that Vice Chair Barnes had thrown out. What I would request would be a format similar to what we did last year, where there was like a Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. That was extremely helpful in the way that you presented that to us. I was thankful for it last year, and I would appreciate that approach again this year.
Mr. Schneider.
So I'm going to be honest, when I was going through the budget, to get to your point, Chris, you said earlier that it's a really hard budget to do. I had a hard time looking at low-hanging fruit or things that I would be comfortable with. So while I applaud the idea to come up with $1 million cut, I'm going to be looking with a very cautious eye as to what that's going to be, because my belief is that we're paying the price in some ways for capital things that we have to do for maintenance and infrastructure in our facilities, I should say. To me, if you had to say, what's my budget thought in looking at this stuff, the only thing that I, in clear conscience, would even consider cutting, based on what I know today, is pushing the paving project at the high school out, potentially. The other three things that are on the CIP, we've been told, and we all agree are required. The HVAC system is rusting out on the cafeteria roof. The track is not repairable, and it's dangerous now, the way it's set up. And the roof at the middle school, even though it came many years earlier than we thought, we're told that it is what it is. So in my mind, can we get by? The town did a great thing. They went and patched a bunch of the paving, which I think might have bought us a little bit of time. Does it need to be done? Yeah, but so for me, that's the only thing that I could see in looking at it. The other thing we haven't talked about as a board is the recommendations of the planning board about moving things up in the capital plan. I personally don't support any of those. I would not entertain moving them up, given what I know and the planning that we talked about last time, that we're not sure they took into account the bonding of the large amount. So for me, I'll certainly entertain the discussion around any cuts that the superintendent comes back with, but I think it's going to be really hard, and I'm not looking for a lot of movement, unfortunately. So,
thank you. Ms. Guglielmi.
Well, then I think as a reminder for this last year, we ended up having to kind of go back and get creative around some funds that we were really tight for. What fund was that we had to take it out of the?
Are you talking about our approach to budgeting and looking at the salary line items?
You know, we took some money out of a fund earlier, Matt, you might remember, and it was, if we didn't use it all, we had some discussion that we would put a warrant to put it back. What was it?
Are you talking about the revenues that were returned from Health Trust?
No, do you remember,
No, it was the special ed emergency fund, taking money out of that. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Because we had an overage of population, so we had to address that. We could not have
exactly.
the staff to serve the children, and so we kept them at Master Gullah Elementary.
Exactly.
We
And I
drew from
raised
fund.
the issue that these are non-special ed children that would, would it be appropriate to take the money out of that fund? Is that
Right.
what
right,
you were referring
right.
to?
And then
Okay.
there was some discussion if we would take a full amount, was it a couple $100,000 or something, or if we would go incrementally and take it out. And I still want to, I think the last I had heard, we had actually used the full amount. But I want to make sure, because we had talked about putting a warrant if there was any excess to put the money back, I recall. But my whole point in bringing it up in the first place is the fact that I believe it was a result of some of the cuts that we had made that left us without much wiggle room. And we certainly can't be in a situation, we don't have a creative way or a way to solve that, we put some things in jeopardy. So I think it is very challenging. I agree with Andy, but I'd like to see what we can come up with and have that discussion on what's prudent and what aligns best with the interest of the district.
That's great. Mr. Schneider?
Yeah, there's one other thing you alluded to. We talked about the staffing and things that we had to add incrementally from the last time. Last time, there was a big deal about adding a pre-K at Thornton's Ferry, and there was the cost of staffing that was there was cost of all that stuff, and it got a lot of airtime with the public around adding another preschool. I think I want to make sure that everybody's clear that's watching is that right now we have staffing for 3 preschools. We just have 2 of them stuffed into one building, and that the incremental cost is just to add that playground and move it into the regional to get to Director Fabrizio's comment about having them more neighborhood-wise wide. I think that's something that we need to do this year. So when I look at cutting that playground equipment, I think is not something I would look at, because I think we've got the staffing in place, and I think for many reasons, having those in the 3 different places is appropriate. So I just wanted to, because we didn't really touch that too much last time when we talked, but I want to sort of get it out there that the staffing's already in place. So the big exposed dollar amounts are already expended by us. So.
Great. Superintendent?
And to add to Board Member Schneider, and the furniture. So everything will be transferred, furniture and staff.
Right. So the incremental furniture and everything is not an issue at this point. It's all part of it.
Right. Okay. Mr. Chevenel?
Yeah, there's one other thing for consideration. The timing isn't the best because it does come a little bit late in the game. But we are formally going out for bid for the roofing project. And so some years there's some savings there to be had through the bidding process. So that could be something that could factor in, but it's January 29th. That's when the bids are coming into my office.
So it might be something at deliberative session, perhaps.
Perhaps.
That could be moved. Okay, great. So in terms of direction, you have it. And I think for our next meeting, which is Tuesday, January 12th at Town Hall, where we'll be having a hearing on the middle school, the district-wide budget, and potential warrant articles. Hopefully that information can be available such that we can move forward. I agree with what everyone here said. I think the challenge in finding an amount as significant as what we described either comes on the back of capital projects or headcount, which is where those numbers would typically be found. And I agree with Vice Chair Barnes in terms of the staffing levels and student-teacher ratios at each grade level, that we are probably where we want to be, and that doing anything beyond that would be difficult to palate. So I don't envy you, but I thank you for taking that on. Just quickly, in terms of upcoming meetings for anyone who is actually watching, as I mentioned, Tuesday's meeting on January 12th. Again, Monday, January 18th, is a regular school board meeting where we will be approving the 2016-2017 budget. So 2 more meetings for the school board on this topic. And that will take us to item number 6, public participation on agenda items. Seeing no public, I will close that, and we will adjourn this budget hearing of the Merrimack School District budget. Yes. I don't know for a budget hearing that we do, but I will entertain one. Mr. Schneider, seconded by Ms. Guagliumi. All those in favor say aye. Aye, carries 5-0-0. And what is the student rep's opinion? He's in favor. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
So there's this grant, and there was this webinar, and I didn't get back to you. I apologize. About this grant is with the National Endowment for the Arts and the Park Service. I think it's spearheaded in all this verbiage. It says NEA is turning 50, and the National Park Service is all excited because they're going to turn 100 in 2016. So they're gearing up for this. Wow. I couldn't attend the webinar, and Jackie was willing to, but I didn't get back to her about the information. But I looked this morning, and it was recorded, so we could go back and look at it. So I included the web link of how to do that, and then also the very general guidelines. I haven't delved. I need to look at this webinar too to delve into all the information. It says it's from $10,000 to $100,000. I think the point is that the artist is supposed to bring in the community and do something engaging, and you guys are considered part of the National Park Service because I'm working on this effort with you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it's matching, and I think, and again I'll verify this, the deadline for this might be February 19th, but there might be multiple deadlines, options I should say. They list like 4 different dates, and I didn't understand. I think this webinar might help.
Yeah, sounds like. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I can do this, and you can look at it too, and then maybe we can compare notes and see if this is worth pursuing at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, Lydia. That's great.
I'll hand you this.
We're on a roll here, Jackie, for winning money.
That's right.
Yeah, sure, thank you. Thank you.
So I'm trying to remember examples they had of grants they've done like this, and I actually can't. I'm blanking. But I don't know that it's out of the realm. What surprised me is that they didn't all involve hundreds of thousands of people, which is nice because that's always the problem I have. Sometimes when you go for national grants, they want urban youth or something.
Yeah.
And you're
That's like
okay.
the whole state of New Hampshire.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
we just can't compete with big numbers.
Yeah.
New York City,
Yeah.
we're not going to go up against. So it's nice when there's some project that had 50 kids or something.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Now, subsequently, okay. Anything else on that
No.
you want to include for now? And you got your hands full till the next
Yeah. I
event.
think we
huh?
have a few things that we might
Keep going.
be able
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
bring ourselves at
Yeah.
forefront of the community.
Now, Deborah sent me something from a Boy Scout. And I don't remember if I distributed it to you all or not. But there's a Boy Scout who wants to
is proposing to build an outdoor classroom in the Mastrocola complex down near the trail, but on school district land. And his idea is to do something similar to what was done over at the middle school, Madeline Bennett. There's an outdoor classroom there. However, there's some differences in the terrain and in the location and so on. And she just wanted to make us aware of that. I will send you, this thing will have to go to the school board for their approval and review. It's all on their land, so we might have, she suggested they come to us for some input, that the scout come to us with some input. But I think first he's going to go and see if it's going to be allowed, and then see if he can work it. And she thought he might not be able to get permission from the school because it's actually out of sight of the school. It's sort of down in the valley by the river, and may not be too popular with teachers and administration. So I keep track of it. You see how many kids come back.
Is that little classroom up there used, do we know?
I don't
We
know.
should check on on the
I know what you mean.
middle school to see
Yeah.
if they use that.
Yeah,
It's just planks on stumps, you know.
that's the idea. It was,
And
Yeah.
we do own 1 acre
yeah, but I
with a
think,
200-foot frontage
yeah.
and access to that,
Yeah.
apart from the school department.
So if the school doesn't let him do it, he can move it over onto,
If the school doesn't want him to do it,
I don't think we want to get
want to
involved.
either.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I wanted you to be aware of that. And,
It does to me too.
Yeah.
For the elementary and upper elementary, it would be a long walk,
yeah.
all the way up to the high school
Yeah.
and then back behind
Yeah.
the high school.
Yeah, it's a hike. It's a good idea, but he can come up with it.
Yeah. Just before we depart here, I just had one thought for Karen.
Okay.
See if you can find somebody who's good with art.
I
Think you can do that? Well, anybody. I'll open it up to the whole committee. Find somebody who could help us
Yeah,
with sign
I'm
design.
not a graphic, I don't know anything about graphic arts.
Okay,
I
I didn't, no, I meant find somebody who
that
is.
can help do it.
Yes.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So
Well,
with that particular one.
find another person who might get a kick out of doing this for us. And so that's an assignment for everybody.
I bet there's somebody at the school, high school.
Well,
You know, get
oh,
somebody
that's
to-
true,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah.
I know, I mean, the only people I can come up with instantly are, of course, people I'm working with over at the library trustees and so on, and they're so busy doing what
Right,
they're
right.
doing,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
for me to ask them to do more, I just wouldn't.
We can try.
Well, you
A
don't
Boy
have to ask
Scout or
them,
a
you can
Girl
ask them if
Scout
they would
that
like to
already
do
knows
more.
graphics. The kids in the
We
high
have a
school already
graphic
know how to do
artist.
all this stuff
Here's
without
a-
blinking an eye.
Yeah,
I'm going to
if
write
we
down
can
the
find
name
Bob
of
Galen.
the
Okay.
woman
Yeah.
who does this for
That's
Forest
exactly, that's what
Hill.
we try to do with the
Forest
chamber.
Hill, oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
To
Okay,
some
so-
extent, we
Yeah.
had photographers.
Okay, see if you
don't
do
know
it.
He was in
where
Rotary
you
with
know,
us several years
Yeah.
ago.
They like to get
Yeah.
Lynn.
Okay, I'm trying to bring the meeting to a close. I'll ask for public comment or comments on anything I didn't talk about today, because we're a little bit over time, but which is good. And if there is none, I'll say our next meeting should be, it looks like we got a pretty good attendance at this hour and day, so I'm going to suggest a couple of Fridays, February 20th or February 27th, the 2 Fridays in February. The 20th is the day before the Winter Carnival, if you wanted to do it then, or if you want to put it over till the 27th, and we'll get the results of the popularity of the booth at the Winter Carnival, what suits you all.
Let's do that, and then we can report back on how the Winter Carnival was.
Okay, 27th, is everybody okay with that?
27th.
Yeah, all set? There it is.
20th doesn't work for me, so that works.
Well, see, yeah, you just spoke up. I almost stepped on your vacation there.
Okay, okay.
Okay, if there's no other,
I can tell.
business, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? No. Okay, did you get enough notes for minutes,
Oh,
Jackie?
yes,
I
I'm
know
so
you're
glad.
writing it.
Rotary and how well it will fit in an environment where there's wetlands on multiple sides. And to make it large enough for buses to be able to navigate and still be able to safely navigate everything else around, I'm concerned about how much wetland impact we're going to end up having. So again, I haven't seen it. I thought the plan before actually was fairly reasonable. When you consider the amount of traffic coming out of Chestnut Hill would be fairly light. Buses wouldn't be stopped for long periods of time. A short delay at a stop sign is not going to impact a lot when you have a light at the end of the street, from what I can tell. But it certainly needs to be evaluated and understood. But I think we need to understand all the impacts, not just a school bus delay, but any other impacts that might happen to the environment as well.
It's my understanding, and again, I'm not driving the process, where I think from their perspective, we were one of many stops to governing bodies and committees and boards on their way back ultimately to the planning board. So I think the understanding is what they're looking for is a check from the school board so that they can now take it back to ultimately to the planning board to address the concerns that you just raised. That's my understanding anyway.
Yeah, if I could just elaborate just briefly.
Yes, ma'am.
Having been involved with Stephen Keach and Ken Clinton, who's the engineer for the developer, one of the main concerns obviously was the buses and the bus traffic, because in the afternoon they all queue up around the middle school, and when they leave en masse, and they just go right through that the circle right there, and to have each one stop, that would be a delay. And then the sight distances between Old Blood and Madeline Road, it takes around 240 feet for a car to recognize another car coming in the opposite direction, react, and stop. And when you had that T intersection, you had the stop sign, and left-hand turns are notoriously dangerous anyway, going into the school proper. So this seemed to solve those issues. Obviously, it'll be brought back through the formal channels. We're looking just in the end to perhaps craft a letter saying that we don't object to the design that was presented to the school board, and then it'll go back through the normal channels. It still has to go through DES. When looking at it right now, currently, it falls within the parameters of the existing circle there. So just as a layman, I'm not looking at too much of a wetland impact, although I'm probably a little bit more than a layman after all these years. But it's going to have to go forward through the various boards, and eventually it's going to have to go through DES for their final blessing.
I was just curious if somebody might speak to it says agenda item number 5. It says Chestnut Hill Development, parentheses, Old Blood Road. It says development and their attorney. Are we anticipating somebody to be here this evening? Or was that?
On the 20th, tonight? Oh, gosh, no.
It does have it.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, I just noticed it there.
It's
and was
listed
just
as
curious.
that, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It was listed.
It's all your fault. No.
I see how this goes.
That originally had been put in there, so we're not sure what the original intent was. Any other comments or questions from anyone? Okay, moving on.
Perhaps they didn't expect to get a positive response from the school board when they made their presentation.
Perhaps. Okay, recycling update. Town council and school board to share respective progress in recycling efforts and determine possible next steps. Paul McCauley and Dr. Mark McLaughlin are here. I know that the town council has often encouraged the school to be a partner with us in trying to increase the use of recycling and perhaps integrating some recycling concepts in with whatever curriculum, whether it be science or whatever. So I guess this is just an opportunity for us to hear about and want to encourage you again, but two, to also listen to see what you've already done. So we are all ears.
Good evening. Just a quick background. From January of 2012, so calendar year 2012 to calendar year 2013, our single-stream recycling went up about 5%, which is a good jump. We did a lot of changes in town. We smoothed out the swap shop. We put up signage and things of that sort. And the group, the little group that we put together, working group the town put together, was looking at some potential partnership with the school where we could send out some recycling newsletters and what actually can be recycled in single stream and explain what single stream means and some of the changes that have occurred at the transfer station to make single stream recycling more advantageous for people to move through the recycling building and things of that sort. You know, on Saturday I think I had a long wait. It was 2 minutes. To get through the building. So it isn't like the queuing that we used to have 5, 10, 15 minutes when we had the swap shop there and other things. And we're looking to partner with the school and maybe give some information that can go out with the students home, because as we know, as the younger kids, the K through 7 kids get involved with it, and that will progress as they get older, and they'll do it. And it's something that a father and son or a father and daughter can do, or a mother and daughter can do on a Saturday morning or when they go to the transfer station, is something they could do together. And I know we had several questions in the last time we talked about, I know the school recycles, but what is the school doing with the recycling and things of that sort? And are you seeing a benefit to recycling?
Well, first of all, we thank the town for its invitation to partner on this because it's a really important subject, and I think we're really pleased that we can find a common ground here. I think that's really, we're going to find some real fruit in that. Our efforts really are twofold. One is kind of in the community service mode, and that primarily relates to clubs at the high school, let's say, student council, Interact, other clubs where the notion of community service and contributing to a healthy community are fundamental. And so the practical application of that is that they have established paper recycling places throughout the high school and intentional efforts to engage in that recycling. And so there's been a bit of public outreach about that too, talking about how many trees are saved when a certain number of pounds of paper are recycled and so on. So that has, and so that outreach has really extended to students. And as was pointed out before, when students take that information and they take it to parents, that really has a big impact because it's a dinner table conversation, and then that becomes something that becomes understood and lived in the day-to-day. So that happens right now, too. In each of our schools, there are classroom bins for recycling, and that's intentional to continue to support the idea. That's a good conversation prompter just about being a good citizen, and that relates to the curriculum component of what we do, because in social studies curriculum, there are threads of the curriculum that talk about being a good citizen, and that means not just a local citizen, but a state citizen and a national citizen and a world citizen, and it relates to, you know, keeping your planet clean and safe and so on. And so there are links there, and clearly there are links in science as well. So really we have kind of a threefold approach. One has to do, again, with the community service element, and then the other has to do with curriculum in those two areas particularly. So, and there are lots of initiatives in town. Our automotive, in the district, our automotive department at the high school recycles its metals. And they don't just do that without thinking. They know that these are usable parts, and that they know that there's a recycle bin for that metal, and that metal is going to go to the proper place. And there's some study about what happens with those pieces of metal. Other items of furniture that can be separated, metals separated from wood, those go in their places, and the students are aware, made aware by their instructors about that. So there are lots of different ways that I think that our students are engaging in that understanding and knowledge and sharing that, and anything that the town continues to want to do to partner, we are really excited about it, including the information that you were offering that would be distributed. I think that through the normal process that those kinds of things get reviewed, we're really happy to welcome that.
One of the things I was thinking of when you were speaking is, did you ever see the video that Rick Seymour did about the recycling? It's really a very well done. Rick Seymour is the head of DPW, and I'm sure we can make it available through our.
We'll definitely get him a copy.
And it really brings in a bag of trash. He literally goes to the transfer station, takes a bag of trash, and said, okay, if we took out anything that was recyclable, let's see what. And it went from a full bag to a really small bag. So to me, you know, kids, visually, that makes the impact. And it's not only the paper at school, and it's not only the water bottles that you use at school. It's what happens at home. And we are hoping the kids start annoying their parents because they will do that. You know, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And that, I think, is a really good visual cue for them, for their own memory. So I'd like you to encourage. It's an available resource. It's done by us. It's our transfer station. So maybe we can provide copies.
Maybe we'll get Rick up there to do an updated version.
Well, that was well done, though. It really made the point. It's home stuff, you know. Okay. Oh, my goodness. Dan Dwyer, then Bill.
I hate to give criticism again, but I'm going to. But the signs up there are still pitiful. We've been on everybody for over a year. Bottles, glass, paper, there's so many different things that we could be doing more with signs, and we haven't. So, shaking my finger at Paul McCallie on that one.
Bill Boyd?
Thank you. No, it's more, I guess, more of a comment directly to Assistant Superintendent McLaughlin, just to kind of put the bug in his ear. And I hate volunteering employees, but I know we have Ian at the transfer station who has a certification in recycling, and I think with some of the kids at the high school that are taking an active role in recycling, and we're looking to, broaden their educational perspective. To me, I think there's an opportunity there for maybe some mentoring there, where the high school kids could reach out to Ian and talk about his experience, some of the training, education that he's gotten, and then along those same lines, from a curriculum standpoint, that the high school kids could take that experience and maybe work with the elementary school kids on. Now you're talking more of creating a role model kind of scenario for the high school students. I mean, it's all up in the stratosphere, but I think it's something, at least in my mind, that we should consider, especially if we're trying to increase the level of community involvement, if we're trying to drive our tipping fees and keeping them as low as possible, we need to be thinking a little bit more directed towards how we can do that. And I think the peer-to-peer relationship, I think reaching out to somebody in town who actually works day-to-day and has the impact handling all of our recyclables at the transfer station, I think it magnifies the kids, what they do in the classroom. I think it magnifies tenfold when they actually see somebody actually working in the arena doing something practical in that particular area. So I would hope that you might cross that bridge and reach out at some particular point.
I think that's a really practical and excellent recommendation, and I'll talk to Paul and see if we can't get Ian involved in some of our programs. And thank you. It's a good suggestion.
Lon Woods?
I suppose no one's too surprised that I might have something to say about recycling. A very good resource for you, Mark, would be Mark Dufour over at the Northeast Resource Recovery Association over in Chichester. They have a program that they target 2 schools for encouraging practical and curricular involvement in recycling.
Thank you very much.
And the best part of that is it's low cost or no cost.
Finley Rothaus?
Actually, a lot of the points I was going to make were covered. As Lon has just spoken to, I believe they are free, no cost, because when our discussions were revolving around the single stream, they said that they would make available all types of things as well as educational opportunities. I love Bill's idea of Ian, though. I think he would be a great person in there. Whether or not he might be interested, I guess, is another thing. But he's spectacular, and he's very invested in it. Coming up a couple of years ago with ideas to try and have a more efficient system so we would actually get higher payment for our recyclable product. At my wife's school, where she works, they actually have a nationally recognized recycling program where I can't remember what company gave them the baler, but they're so amazing with their recycling ability that they have a baler to bale their own paper and cardboard and everything right at the school. But I think I always feel badly because I always believe this is a great idea, that the school could help in, instilling these ideas in the young kids and everything. But I never follow through until the next meeting when I think about it again. So shame on me. But I really, it is where if we can impact at the elementary school level, those are the kids who go home and browbeat the parents into submission. And lastly, I have to tell you that Dan Dwyer, who was not a participant in recycling, is now the brutal guy at his house picking through the garbage to take out recyclables and put them where they belong. So it works.
Tom Mahan?
On that note, it's because of the single stream is what's made it so successful. If we didn't have the single stream, then this effort just would fall flat because it would be too difficult. People wouldn't participate. But because you can get rid of so much recyclable stuff, it's really what makes it exciting where the numbers can grow. Like you said, 5%. I really feel over a couple of years we could grow it 15% more. I really do.
Great.
Yeah, just to follow up on comments from Finley and from Dan. What we found when we started working on this several years ago was that it was scaring the living daylights out of the waste management people. Not and to use that as a broad term, not as a company name. Okay, the solid waste disposal business, and the more that the fact that we were using effectively single stream recycling enabled us to negotiate a very decent renewal of for our tipping fees that have essentially flattened them out over the life of the contract. Not to mention the bulldog approach the town manager takes to those kinds of negotiations, but there is an impact that goes further than just the recycling impact. There is an impact on what we are charged to dispose of our stuff, if you will, and it's been a very positive thing for the community.
Anyone else? Yes, Sandy Schneider.
So it's under the term recycling, but it's not necessarily of the programs we talked about. To give you an idea of sort of the way we as the school board think about recycling in general is, I'm not sure if you're aware, but we're replacing all of the bleachers in the gym because the structure is just not sound anymore. So we put money to that. We tried to make sure that the wood and the metal that's part of the bleachers gets reused or either reused in the schools, or what we do, we try to sell to be able to offset the costs. So we're trying to use just in our normal day-to-day recycling in addition to what the town does this way. So.
Good. Thank you. Okay, I think we can move on to, I believe, the minutes.
Madam Chair, I would move the Merrimack School Board, Merrimack Town Council joint meeting September 6, 2012, public session minutes with the following modifications.
We're ready, Bill.
Page 1, line 44, puddle of water being a potential breeding spot should be breeding. On page 3, line 116, it's not private property asepsis, it was public-private partnerships, to the best of my recollection.
Gotcha.
Same page, line 138. It's not a memo of understand, it's a memo of understanding.
Gotcha.
Proceeding forward to page 10, line 455. Cancel has 2 L's.
Gotcha.
And on page 12, line 563, I'll defer to my Catholic college grads in the audience. Is air conditioned hyphenated? No. Okay.
No, 2 words.
Otherwise, I'm good.
Okay, I have a initial. I need a second.
Second.
Who said second for Shannon? Barnes, a second. Okay, any other, yes?
I just wanted, somebody might want to check Junie Pierce's spelling of her last name. That might be correct.